Okay, on to Star Wars, okay? Yeah, well, actually I am, Star Wars. It fits so well to what I want to talk about today. Oh, I'm loud now. Get that microphone right there. So anyway, back in 1983, I was my sophomore in college? Yeah, it was it, sophomore in college. And 5 years or 6 years previous to that, they had the original Star Wars, which just blew my mind. So this one was the Return of the Jedi. It was something much anticipated and looked forward to, and as soon as it hit the theaters, well, you see what happens when it hit the theaters here. We all wait in line for the tickets and things. And so I'm watching this, and Luke Skywalker, our protagonist, the young man is growing up with the Force and is learning to be a Jedi Knight. How many people have seen Star Wars? 2, 3, 4, okay. Luke is the good guy, okay? Jedi Knights are the good guys. And his nemesis, Darth Vader, all black. Luke. I can't do the James Earl voice. Luke, it's whatever. So anyway, it's always this good versus evil. Darth Vader is the antipathy of evil in the world and the universe, and he's trying to take control. He and the Emperor, who we don't know yet, he's just kind of the guy pulling the strings, the Emperor. Darth Vader answers to him. In the Return of the Jedi, Luke confronts Darth Vader. And it's interesting, their whole conversation, because in the previous movie, Darth Vader says the famous line, "Luke, I am your father." "No, you can't be, you're the nemesis," whatever. In the third movie, Luke has accepted the fact that Darth Vader is his father, and Luke has gone to more training. He comes back as a full-fledged Jedi Knight, ready to combat any kind of evil. So the Emperor and Darth Vader are planning to turn him to the dark side so that the three of them can rule with complete control over the whole universe. But the key is to get Luke to turn. And so they use any means they can. And they hunt him down, and Luke says, "I'm endangering the mission here, I should just go." So Luke sacrifices himself willingly to Darth Vader. Handcuffs, the whole thing. "Take me to the Emperor." They didn't have to track him far. So as they're talking, and Luke and Darth Vader are in the hallway, just before they get to the Emperor's chambers, he says, "Father, I know there's still good in you." And Darth says, "It's too late for me, son. Soon you will know the power of the dark side, and together we can rule the..." But Luke won't have any of it. So he goes into the Emperor, and the Emperor is sitting there all smug and arrogant and all this, and he's trying to get Luke to get angry, to be fearful, to let out his hatred. All these things lead him down the path to the dark side. And as they're talking, Luke picks up his lightsaber, and he's going to strike down the Emperor, and of course, Darth Vader stops it. And then the battle begins. The last lightsaber battle with Darth and Luke begin. And they're fighting back and forth. And the Emperor's sitting back laughing because he sees this young Jedi getting more frustrated, more angry. And it comes to the point that Luke bests his father, disarms him, so to speak. Yes, literally. And so Luke has Darth in his sights. He can do whatever he wants with him. He has the power to destroy him. And the Emperor standing right there says, "Good, good, kill him, and then your training will be complete for the dark side." And Luke looks down, and he can't do it. He turns his lightsaber off, throws it off to the side. He said, I am a Jedi Knight, like my father before me." And Darth Vader gets up, and you can see below the mask, you can almost imagine his look of confusion. Because all this time he was looking to destroy Luke, or turn him, and then Luke does this act of mercy and gives himself up to whatever will happen next. And we'll see that, and he says, "I'd rather die than turn to the dark side." And of course, the Emperor has this blue lightning coming out of his fingertips, and he's torturing Luke, and Luke goes down and goes, "No, no!" And Darth is watching there kind of stoically. Well, you can't see his face, he's got a mask on. So the Emperor's blue electricity, Luke is, "Father, Father," and Darth, and it goes pan from the Emperor to Darth, the Emperor. And pretty soon, it's just before Luke is dying, you see Darth Vader suddenly turn and grab the emperor and hold him over his head. Blue lightning still coming out of his hands, and Darth throws him into the pit, and he blows up in the power surges. And then Darth collapses, and he's weak. And he's becoming more labored. And Luke, finally, in the next scene, Luke is dragging his father to his plane, to his ship. And his father says, "Stop." And he take my mask off so I can see with my real eyes, my own eyes, whatever. So Luke takes the mask off. And he says, "We have to get in, Father. I have to save you." And his father says, "You already have. You already have. Save me." So in this instant, even though Luke was tempted, he refused. Even upon death, he refused to turn to the dark side. What's more amazing, too, is not only Luke saved himself, he saved his father. He turned his father from the dark side. His father had this inside him the whole time, that he wasn't being true to his true self. So Luke not only survived, his father turned as well. Now, Luke is no comparison to Jesus at all, but in this story, we have Satan tempting Jesus, and tempting him and saying, "You need to follow me. If you only follow me, we can rule this universe. All the kingdoms are yours, and we'll be buddies, hand in hand," or whatever it is. And Jesus saying, "No, that's not who I am." And even when he's starving to death, 40 days without food, it's tempting. I remember 8 years ago being famished, going home, getting a Little Caesars pizza and a box of Twinkies and finishing them both. That's a lot of food, isn't it? And then falling into a coma about an hour later, and drooling on the desk and all that kind of thing. But we do things when we're really down and out, when we're at our lowest. Sometimes it's the easiest to get into falling for temptations, and that's human. We fight for that all the time. You know, Luther talked about being a saint and sinner at the same time. Yeah, that's our human condition. There's a lot of good in us, and there's some stuff that's not so good, and there seems to be a battle between the two. And what do we do with that? What do we do with that? Well, we have to think about this Christ who went through things. The devil tried to get him to change who he was. He tried to make him self-centered. He tried to get him so that he was only thinking about himself for his own glory, his own feeling of being lifted up, only focused on himself. And Jesus is basically saying, this is who I am. I am not just for me. I am actually for everyone else. If I'm going to have bread and feed people, it's going to be for thousands of people. And we see that later on, feeding of the 5,000 to 4,000 plus people. He'll take that bread and he'll divide it up, but it's not going to be for his benefit, but for our benefit. So Jesus being true to who Jesus is, his calling, even I mentioned before, his baptism, God said, "This is my son who I'm well pleased with." That was Jesus the carpenter. He hadn't done any mission work yet. God was pleased with Jesus because Jesus was living into who he was. At that time, you follow your father's footsteps. If your father's a carpenter, you're a carpenter. And then Jesus received the call to do something else, to do the Son of God stuff that we all are very thankful for. But the point is, when we don't live into who we are, trouble happens. I've seen it too much. I remember a young man who was destined to be a pastor, or at least his father, who was a pastor, thought he should be a pastor. And so the son, who really wanted to be a lawyer, would act out and get picked up for drinking or whatever these offenses were, until someone else had to say, "You're not going to be a pastor because there are just too many red flags. And as a matter of fact, we think you want to do something else. But you need to save face with your father, so then we're telling you, you can't do this." A sigh of relief, because his son could finally do what he was called to do and be a lawyer. How many people do things because they feel like they need to please someone else? I'm walking with my daughter on the sidewalk, and I see a neighbor said, "You better learn," he's an engineer, "you better learn to do math and physics and chemistry and all this kind of stuff." And my daughter likes to write stories. She hates math. I think, well, I'm not going to send her to school and make her be an engineer when she really in her heart wants to be an author or whatever that is. That's just not who she is. How often do we struggle with ourselves that we're not living into our true selves, whatever our hearts will do for others? And this is something Jesus shows us, to be true to yourself. Some theologians think that's what sin is, when you're not living into your created self, who God creates you to be. I'm not saying drug dealer and all this kind of stuff, but for the good of the world, for the good of, well, the good of God. Two selves. Two selves. I want to finish up with a story, brief story. It is. Make sure I cover everything first. Yep, cover that. Probably right. For who we are, try to be a believer. Okay. An old Cherokee tale of two wolves. Heard this before? Cecil smiles. Yeah, we've heard this before, some of us. Anyway, one evening an old Cherokee Indian told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." Well, the grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Well, which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." The one you feed. Well, saint and sinner at the same time, which do we feed? And what do we feed it? We all have a sense of what we need to do and what God calls us to do. But be mindful of that. The human condition, saint and sinner, the two wolves, however you want to think about it. Which one do we feed? And we have whichever one we feed. Here's the thing about God. Even if we feed the wrong wolf, God still has compassion for us. Even if we slip and fall or feed the wrong wolf, we go into the sinner part, God is still with us, bringing us up, lifting us up, trying to get us to see the light, to see His goodness, to see His mercy, to see His love, and inject it into our souls and to make us aware that is the better part. It wasn't the easy path, like Satan was giving Jesus the easy path. It's a tougher path, but more meaningful for us. It helps us grow as people. Helps us grow as children of God. Not easy all the time, but well worth it. All because Jesus did not fall into temptation and pursued His life and His journey to the cross and the resurrection so that we could have life. Amen.